Welcome to Chosen by Love, where fate brings hearts together in the most unexpected ways. Subscribe and join our growing family of story lovers. Tell us where you're watching from, and let's begin today's journey. No ring yet. Logan Pierce's voice cut through the crowded rooftop lounge like a spotlight snapping on in a dark theater. Conversations slowed. Heads turned. A few people exchanged curious glances before looking directly at Aubrey Whitmore. The city skyline shimmered behind her, glass towers glowing against the warm summer night, but suddenly every light felt too bright. Logan leaned back in his chair with the easy confidence of a man who loved having an audience. He lifted his champagne glass and smirked. Come on, Aubrey. It's been 3 years? Still waiting for somebody to put a ring on your finger. A ripple of laughter moved around the table. Not cruel enough to sound shocking, just cruel enough to sting. Aubrey forced a polite smile and lowered her eyes toward the crystal glass in front of her. She had attended the reunion for one reason only: to prove to herself that she had moved on. She hadn't expected Logan to be there. She definitely hadn't expected him to make her the night's entertainment. Maybe she's too picky, one woman joked. Or maybe she's married to her job, another added. More laughter followed. Aubrey folded her hands neatly in her lap. The gesture looked calm. Inside, her pulse hammered against her ribs, because hidden inside the pocket of her tailored navy blazer was something none of them knew existed. A wedding ring. A simple platinum band she carried every day but never wore. Logan noticed her silence and mistook it for embarrassment. He always had a talent for misunderstanding people. You know, he continued, grinning wider, I used to think you'd be the first one married. Guess life had other plans. Several people nodded sympathetically. Aubrey recognized the look immediately. The look people gave someone they believed had failed at something important. She could have ended the conversation with a single sentence. She could have told them the truth. She could have explained that 8 months ago she had quietly married one of the most powerful men in America. She could have said that every morning she woke up inside a penthouse overlooking Manhattan. She could have revealed that the billionaire CEO whose face appeared on business magazine covers every month was legally her husband. But she said none of those things, because promises mattered. And the promise she had made 8 months ago still stood. No public announcements. No interviews. No social media posts. No ring. Not until the merger was complete. Logan shook his head dramatically. Honestly, Aubrey, if I were you, I'd stop waiting for some billionaire prince to show up. The table erupted again. Aubrey almost laughed at the irony. If only they knew. Her fingers instinctively brushed the fabric covering her pocket. The ring rested there exactly where she had left it that morning. Cool. Hidden. Silent. Much like her marriage. Across the room, music drifted from hidden speakers while servers carried trays of appetizers through clusters of former classmates eager to compare achievements. Promotions. Houses. Vacations. Engagements. Success had become a competition tonight, and Aubrey had unknowingly arrived carrying the biggest secret of all. Hey, Logan said, leaning forward. Don't look so serious. We're just having fun. Fun. The word settled heavily in her chest. She remembered the countless times Logan had hidden sharp comments behind a smile and called them jokes. Back then she had stayed quiet because she lacked confidence. Tonight she stayed quiet for a different reason. She had something worth protecting. Something real. Something none of these people could understand. Aubrey lifted her glass and finally met Logan's eyes. Her smile remained calm. Controlled. Unreadable. I'm doing just fine, Logan. For a moment, the confidence in her voice caught him off guard. Then he shrugged and returned to entertaining the crowd. The conversation shifted. New topics emerged. More laughter followed. Yet Aubrey barely heard any of it. Her thoughts drifted to the man waiting somewhere across the city. Declan Mercer. Billionaire. Husband. The one person who knew exactly how difficult this evening would be. The one person who had asked her before she left, Are you sure you want to go alone? At the time she had smiled and said yes. Now, as Logan's laughter echoed once more across the rooftop, Aubrey slipped her hand into her pocket and wrapped her fingers around the hidden ring. And for the first time all night, she wondered if keeping the secret was about to become impossible. Aubrey kept her fingers wrapped around the hidden ring long after the reunion ended. The cool metal felt heavier than it should have, as if it carried every secret from the last 8 months. An hour later she stepped out of the elevator onto the top floor of Mercer Tower Residences. The private hallway was silent except for the soft hum of recessed lights. Beyond the floor-to-ceiling windows, Manhattan glittered beneath the midnight sky. Most people would have stopped to admire the view. Aubrey barely noticed it anymore. Her mind was still stuck on Logan's laughter. The penthouse door opened before she reached for the handle. Declan Mercer stood there wearing a charcoal sweater with the sleeves rolled to his forearms. No security team. No assistants. No reporters. Just Declan, the billionaire the world knew would have been preparing for a board meeting or negotiating another acquisition. The man standing in front of her was holding a mug of tea. His eyes immediately searched her face. "It was that bad?" he asked quietly. Aubrey tried to smile. "Was it that obvious?" Declan stepped aside to let her in. "Only to me." Something in those 3 words made her chest tighten. The penthouse was warm and peaceful. A lamp glowed near the living room fireplace. The city lights reflected against polished marble and dark wood surfaces. It looked like something from a luxury magazine. Yet the detail Aubrey noticed most was the second mug waiting beside the first one. Declan had expected her home. He always did. She placed her purse on the counter and slipped the ring from her pocket. For a moment she simply stared at it resting in her palm. Declan's gaze followed. Neither of them spoke. The silence carried memories. 8 months earlier she had been sitting in a hospital waiting room staring at a stack of unpaid medical bills. Her father needed specialized treatment. Insurance covered part of it. The remaining balance felt impossible. She remembered the fluorescent lights. The stale coffee. The feeling that the walls were slowly closing in. 2 days later her supervisor had unexpectedly requested a meeting on the executive floor of Mercer Global Holdings. Aubrey had assumed it was work-related. Instead she found herself sitting across from Declan Mercer himself. At the time she knew him only as the famous billionaire who appeared on magazine covers. He had been calm, direct, almost intimidating. A thick folder rested between them on the conference table. "I need someone I can trust," he had said. Aubrey thought he was offering a promotion. Then he slid the folder toward her. Inside was a proposal that seemed impossible. A legal marriage. Temporary. Confidential. Necessary to stabilize a major international merger that investors were closely monitoring. In return, every expense connected to her father's treatment would be covered. Aubrey had stared at the document for nearly 5 minutes before speaking. "Why me?" she finally asked. Declan's answer surprised her. "Because everyone around me wants something from Declan Mercer. You are one of the few people who speaks to me like I am just another human being." Back in the present, Aubrey sat at the kitchen island and slowly turned the ring between her fingers. The memory felt unreal even now. She remembered signing the agreement. She remembered the courthouse ceremony attended by only a lawyer and a judge. She remembered the final condition. No public announcement until the merger was complete. No ring in public. No discussion with anyone outside a small legal team. It had seemed simple at the time. Temporary. Professional. Safe. Declan placed the tea beside her. "You are thinking about the contract again." Aubrey looked up. "I am thinking about how strange life can be." His expression softened. "Do you regret it?" The question lingered between them. Outside, thousands of lights stretched across the city. Inside, the ring gleamed under the kitchen pendant light. Aubrey lowered her eyes to the platinum band and felt her heartbeat quicken. Because for the first time since signing that agreement, she was no longer sure the contract was the reason she wanted to stay. The next few weeks passed in a rhythm neither of them had planned. What began as a legal arrangement slowly started feeling like something far more complicated. Aubrey noticed it first in the small moments. Not grand gestures. Not expensive gifts. Just details. The kind that were easy to miss if nobody was paying attention. Every morning a fresh cup of coffee appeared beside her workspace exactly the way she liked it, with a splash of cream and no sugar. She never asked for it. Declan simply remembered. When her father had a follow-up appointment across town, a driver was already waiting downstairs before she even checked her schedule. When she worked late reviewing reports, dinner somehow arrived at her desk before she realized she had skipped lunch. None of it felt dramatic. That was what made it matter. One rainy Thursday evening, Aubrey finally left the office close to 9 o'clock. Most of the executive floor was dark. The city beyond the windows shimmered beneath sheets of rain. She gathered her things and headed toward the elevator when she noticed a light still glowing beneath the door of the corner office. Declan was still there. Curious, she knocked lightly. "Come in." She stepped inside and found him sitting behind a mountain of documents. His tie had been loosened hours ago. His sleeves were rolled up. For the first time since she had known him, he looked tired. Truly tired. Not billionaire tired. Human tired. He looked up and managed a faint smile. "You should be home." Aubrey crossed her arms. "That is exactly what I was about to say to you." A quiet laugh escaped him. The sound surprised her. Declan Mercer rarely laughed. "I have one more presentation to review. You said that 3 presentations ago." He leaned back in his chair and studied her. "Are you always this stubborn?" "Only when I am right." For a second neither spoke. Then something shifted. The tension of the day seemed to dissolve. They ordered takeout from a small Italian restaurant a few blocks away, and ended up eating in the conference room overlooking Midtown. Rain tapped softly against the glass while thousands of headlights moved below like rivers of light. Aubrey found herself talking about things she rarely shared. Growing up in Connecticut. Her father's endless collection of old vinyl records. The tiny bookstore where she spent entire summers reading. Declan listened carefully, asking questions nobody else ever seemed to ask. When she finished, she realized she had spoken for almost an hour. "What about you?" she asked. Declan stared out at the rain-covered skyline. "There is not much to tell." "I do not believe that." His smile returned, smaller this time. More vulnerable. "My mother taught piano lessons. My father believed success solved everything. They spent most of their lives disagreeing." Aubrey laughed softly. "And which one were you more like?" He thought about it. "I spent years trying to become my father. And now?" Declan looked directly at her. The city lights reflected in his eyes. "Now I am not so sure that was the right choice." Something about the honesty in his voice made her heart stumble. The conversation continued long after the food was gone. For the first time, Aubrey stopped seeing the billionaire featured in business magazines. She saw the man behind the headlines. The man who carried responsibilities most people could not imagine. The man who often ate dinner alone despite having everything money could buy. Weeks later she would remember that night as the moment everything began changing. Because when they finally left the building and stepped into the cool rain-washed air, neither of them noticed that they were walking side by side. Neither of them noticed how natural it felt. And neither of them were ready to admit that somewhere between the contract and the conversations, their hearts had quietly started rewriting the rules. The first sign that not everyone welcomed Aubrey into Declan's world arrived on a bright Saturday afternoon. A charity luncheon hosted by the Mercer Foundation filled one of Manhattan's most prestigious hotels with investors, executives, and social figures whose names regularly appeared in magazines. Aubrey had attended dozens of business events before, but this felt different. The ballroom sparkled beneath crystal chandeliers. Servers moved gracefully between tables covered in white linen. Conversations flowed effortlessly among people who seemed to have known one another for decades. Aubrey stood near one of the tall windows, quietly taking in the room, when a woman's voice interrupted her thoughts. "You must be Aubrey." She turned and found a striking blonde woman in an elegant cream-colored dress studying her with polite curiosity. "I am Victoria Mercer." Aubrey immediately recognized the name. Declan's cousin. Victoria smiled, but the warmth never reached her eyes. "I have heard quite a lot about you." Aubrey extended her hand. "It is nice to meet you." Victoria accepted the handshake lightly. "Is it? I suppose that depends on perspective." The comment landed softly, almost hidden beneath her pleasant tone. Almost. Before Aubrey could respond, another guest approached Victoria, pulling her into conversation. Yet the brief encounter left an uncomfortable feeling behind. Throughout the luncheon, Aubrey noticed similar moments. Small pauses when introductions were made. Curious looks exchanged between people who assumed she would not notice. Questions that sounded friendly but carried an edge beneath the surface. Where did you go to school? What does your family do? How long have you been with the company? None of the questions were inappropriate. Yet together they felt like an invisible evaluation. A test she had never agreed to take. Across the room, Declan was speaking with donors and board members. His attention remained divided among dozens of responsibilities. Aubrey did not want to burden him with something she could not even explain properly. By the end of the afternoon she convinced herself she was imagining things. Then Victoria approached again. "Would you walk with me?" she asked. They stepped onto a private terrace overlooking Central Park. A cool breeze drifted through the air. For a moment neither spoke. Then Victoria rested her hands on the railing and looked out at the skyline. "Declan has always been ambitious," she said. "Everything in his life serves a purpose." Aubrey sensed where the conversation was heading. "What are you trying to say?" Victoria turned toward her. "Only that people often mistake proximity for belonging." The words hung in the air between them. "I do not." Victoria's smile returned. "Good. Then perhaps you understand that some worlds are not easy to enter." Aubrey felt her stomach tighten. "If you have something to say, say it." For the first time, Victoria's polished mask slipped slightly. "You are intelligent, Aubrey. But let us be realistic. The Mercer family has spent generations building influence. Relationships matter. History matters. Tradition matters." Aubrey met her gaze without looking away. "And character matters." Victoria's expression hardened for half a second. Then the smile returned. "Of course it does." Later that evening, back at the penthouse, Aubrey stood alone beside the window watching the city lights flicker below. She replayed the conversation again and again. Part of her wanted to dismiss it. Another part could not ignore the message hidden beneath Victoria's carefully chosen words. "You do not belong here." The sound of the front door opening pulled her from her thoughts. Declan stepped inside after a long meeting and immediately noticed her expression. Something happened. It was not a question. Aubrey hesitated. Then she looked at him. The concern in his eyes felt genuine. Steady. Protective. For the first time all day, she felt herself relax. Yet hundreds of miles away from the bright confidence she projected in public, Victoria Mercer sat in her own apartment staring at a photograph from the luncheon. Her gaze settled on Aubrey. Slowly, thoughtfully, she set the picture down. Whatever polite curiosity she had shown earlier was gone. In its place was something far more dangerous. Determination. 3 weeks later, Aubrey found herself standing beneath a ceiling of crystal chandeliers once again. This time the event was far larger. Mercer Global's annual Innovation Gala attracted investors, executives, journalists, and influential figures from across the country. Hundreds of guests filled the grand ballroom, their conversations blending into a steady hum beneath the soft music. Aubrey adjusted the sleeve of her emerald evening dress and took a slow breath. Declan was scheduled to arrive later after finishing a meeting with international partners. She had insisted on coming ahead of him. Looking back, she would later wish she had not. At first the evening passed smoothly. Several colleagues greeted her warmly. A few board members complimented her recent work on a community development project. For a while she allowed herself to relax. Then she heard a familiar voice. "Well, if it is not Aubrey Whitmore." Her stomach tightened immediately. Logan Pierce approached with the same effortless confidence he had displayed at the reunion. A few people near him turned curiously toward Aubrey. Logan smiled as if greeting an old friend. "Funny running into you here." Aubrey forced a polite expression. "Good evening, Logan. I hear you work for Mercer Global now." He glanced around the ballroom. Pretty impressive upgrade. Several nearby guests chuckled softly. Aubrey recognized the tone instantly. Logan was performing again. He always needed an audience. "I enjoy my work," she replied calmly. "That is great." Logan lifted his drink. "Although I have to admit, every time I see you, I keep expecting some mysterious husband to appear." More laughter followed. Aubrey remained silent. Around them, conversations gradually slowed. People sensed entertainment unfolding. Logan stepped closer, lowering his voice just enough that everyone could still hear. "Actually, I heard something interesting." Aubrey felt a warning sensation in her chest. Did you? Logan nodded. Someone told me you spend a lot of time around executives these days. Maybe you are finally aiming higher. A few uncomfortable smiles appeared among the guests. Even some of Logan's companions seemed uncertain where the conversation was heading. Aubrey could have walked away. She probably should have. Instead, she stood her ground. I am not interested in discussing my personal life. Logan laughed. That is because there is nothing to discuss. The words landed harder than he realized. Not because they were true, because they were completely false. Hidden inside her evening clutch rested the same platinum ring she carried every day, the symbol of a marriage nobody in the room knew existed. Logan spread his hands dramatically. Come on. If there was someone special, surely we would know by now. No ring. No fiancé. No husband. Several heads nodded. Others simply watched. Aubrey felt every eye in the ballroom settle on her. The familiar pressure returned. The same pressure she had felt at the reunion. The same pressure Victoria Mercer seemed determined to amplify at every opportunity. Yet something was different this time. Aubrey was tired of feeling ashamed for protecting a promise. Tired of pretending that part of her life did not exist. Her fingers tightened around the clutch. For one brief second she considered taking out the ring and ending the conversation forever. Then she remembered the merger. The agreement. The commitment she had made alongside Declan. She slowly exhaled and smiled. Not everything valuable needs to be displayed for public approval, Logan. The response caught him off guard. Several nearby guests exchanged surprised looks. Logan's grin faltered for the first time all evening. Only for a second. Then he recovered. That sounds like something people say when they are trying to convince themselves. Laughter returned, though weaker now. Aubrey held his gaze without flinching. Across the ballroom, unseen by either of them, a tall figure had just entered through the main doors. Declan Mercer paused as his eyes immediately found Aubrey surrounded by a crowd. He noticed her rigid posture. He noticed Logan standing directly across from her. And as the room's attention remained fixed on the unfolding scene, Declan's expression slowly changed from curiosity to concern. The atmosphere in the ballroom shifted the moment Declan Mercer began walking toward the crowd. People noticed him immediately. Conversations softened. Investors straightened in their seats. Executives who had spent months trying to secure 5 minutes of his attention suddenly watched his every step. Logan noticed the change as well. His smile remained in place, but uncertainty flickered across his face. Aubrey turned and saw Declan approaching. Relief washed over her for an instant, followed quickly by concern. Something in his expression told her he had witnessed enough to understand exactly what had happened. Good evening, Declan said calmly as he reached the group. His voice was steady, controlled, impossible to ignore. Several guests greeted him enthusiastically. Logan extended his hand. Mr. Mercer. Great event. Declan shook it politely. Thank you for attending. The exchange lasted only seconds, yet Aubrey sensed the difference immediately. Declan's attention never fully left her. It was subtle, almost invisible, but she noticed. He asked if everything was all right. Aubrey gave the answer she always gave. Everything is fine. Declan held her gaze a moment longer. He knew she was not telling the whole truth. Before either could say more, an event coordinator approached and informed Declan that several board members needed him in a private meeting upstairs. He nodded and excused himself. As he disappeared toward the executive elevator, Aubrey felt strangely disappointed. She had wanted a few more minutes. Across the ballroom, Victoria Mercer watched the interaction carefully. Every glance, every pause, every detail. The pieces she had been collecting for weeks were beginning to form a picture. Later that night, long after the gala ended, Victoria entered a private office on the 32nd floor of Mercer Global headquarters. Most employees had gone home. The building was nearly silent. She closed the door behind her and sat in front of a computer. A slim folder rested on the desk. Inside were copies of documents she had quietly obtained through connections within the legal department. For several minutes she reviewed pages filled with confidential information. Then she found what she had been searching for. Her eyes narrowed. A slow smile appeared. Interesting, she whispered. The following morning, rumors began spreading through the company. At first they seemed harmless. Questions whispered between departments. Speculation shared during coffee breaks. Why was Aubrey receiving unusual access to executive projects? Why did Declan personally approve certain requests involving her work? Why did senior leadership appear unusually protective of her? Nobody knew the answers. Yet people loved creating theories. By lunchtime, the gossip had reached multiple floors. By the end of the week, it reached members of the board. Aubrey sensed the change almost immediately. Conversations stopped when she entered rooms. Colleagues who had once greeted her warmly now seemed cautious. One afternoon she walked into a conference room and heard her name mentioned just before the speakers abruptly fell silent. The experience left her unsettled. She tried focusing on work, but the pressure continued growing. Then came the article. A prominent business blog published an anonymous story suggesting that a senior executive had developed an inappropriate favoritism toward an employee connected to a major merger. No names were mentioned, yet everyone inside Mercer Global understood who the article referenced. The speculation exploded overnight. Aubrey stared at the headline from her office desk while her stomach sank. Minutes later her phone rang. Declan. She answered immediately. Have you seen it? He asked. Yes. Silence followed. Then Declan spoke again, his voice lower than usual. Do not believe for 1 second that you caused this. Aubrey closed her eyes. She wanted to believe him. But deep down a painful thought had already begun taking root. What if she was becoming a liability? What if the secret they had protected so carefully was now threatening everything Declan had worked to build? And somewhere else in the city, Victoria Mercer placed a confidential document back into its envelope and smiled. Because she knew something nobody else knew. She had finally discovered the truth about Aubrey and Declan. And she was already deciding how to use it. Aubrey barely slept that night. The city lights beyond the penthouse windows faded into dawn. Yet her thoughts refused to settle. Every headline, every whispered rumor, every suspicious glance replayed in her mind. She sat alone at the kitchen island with a cup of untouched coffee growing cold beside her. For months she had convinced herself that the arrangement was helping everyone. The merger remained stable. Her father was receiving the care he needed. Declan's company continued moving forward. But now the situation felt different. The gossip was no longer affecting only her. It was beginning to affect him. Around 8 o'clock that morning, she walked into Mercer Global headquarters and immediately sensed the tension. Conversations lowered when she passed. A pair of executives standing near the elevators abruptly changed subjects when they noticed her approaching. Aubrey kept walking, her shoulders straight, but each interaction confirmed what she already feared. The story was spreading faster than anyone could contain it. By late afternoon she received a call requesting her presence in a conference room on the executive floor. When she arrived, Declan was already there. The moment the door closed behind her, she knew something had happened. He looked exhausted. Not physically, emotionally. Several folders lay open across the table. Reports, articles, internal memos, evidence of a growing crisis. The board is demanding answers, Declan said quietly. Aubrey lowered herself into a chair. How bad is it? He hesitated. Bad enough that they are questioning decisions connected to the merger. Silence settled between them. Aubrey stared at the documents. For months they had protected their secret carefully. Now that same secret was becoming a weapon. This is my fault, she whispered. Declan immediately shook his head. No. Declan, look around. None of this was happening before me. None of this is because of you. His voice was firm, certain. Yet Aubrey noticed something else beneath it. Worry. Not for himself. For her. That realization made everything harder. She stood and walked toward the floor-to-ceiling window overlooking the city. Hundreds of feet below, people moved through their lives without knowing anything about the battle unfolding inside this room. When we signed the agreement, she said softly, it was supposed to solve problems, not create them. Declan remained silent. Maybe we have reached the point where the best thing I can do is step away. The words seemed to freeze the air between them. Aubrey turned and saw genuine shock in his expression. Do not say that. Why not? Her voice cracked despite her effort to remain composed. Every day this gets worse. Every day the rumors grow. People are questioning your judgment because of me. Declan took a step forward. Because of lies. People believe them. Another silence followed. Long, heavy, painful. Finally, Aubrey reached into her bag and placed a small envelope on the conference table. Declan's eyes immediately moved to it. What is that? She swallowed hard. A solution. Slowly he opened the envelope. Inside were signed divorce papers. For several seconds he simply stared at them. Aubrey felt her heart breaking, but she forced herself to continue. The merger matters. Your company matters. Everything you built matters. If ending this protects those things, then it is the right choice. Declan looked up at her. For the first time since she had met him, she saw something close to hurt in his eyes. Real hurt. Not anger. Not frustration. Loss. Aubrey reached into her pocket and removed the platinum ring she had carried every day for 8 months. Gently she placed it beside the papers. The small band caught the light from the window. A simple piece of metal. Yet somehow it felt heavier than everything else in the room combined. Without another word, Aubrey turned and walked toward the door. Her hand rested briefly on the handle before she paused. Every instinct told her to look back. She did not. Moments later the door closed softly behind her. Alone in the conference room, Declan stared at the signed papers and the ring resting beside them. And for the first time since this arrangement began, he stopped thinking about contracts, mergers, or board members. Because one realization finally became impossible to ignore. He was not afraid of losing the deal. He was afraid of losing Aubrey. 4 days passed without a single conversation between Aubrey and Declan. She returned to her apartment, focused on work from a distance, and tried convincing herself she had made the right decision. Every morning she repeated the same logic. The merger would be protected. The company would recover. The rumors would fade. Yet each day felt heavier than the one before. Meanwhile, inside Mercer Global, something unexpected happened. Declan Mercer stopped cooperating with the narrative everyone else wanted him to accept. Board members pushed for explanations. Advisors recommended damage control. Public relations teams suggested carefully crafted statements. Declan listened to every proposal and rejected them all. Because for the first time in years, business was no longer the most important thing in his life. On Friday afternoon, Victoria Mercer arrived at a special executive gathering organized for major investors and shareholders. The event had been planned for months and was expected to attract media attention from across the country. Victoria felt confident. The merger announcement was scheduled for that evening. Once completed, the pressure surrounding recent rumors would finally settle. More importantly, she believed Aubrey was gone for good. She could not have been more mistaken. Across town, Aubrey sat in a small coffee shop staring out the window when her phone suddenly vibrated. A message appeared from Declan's executive assistant. It contained only one sentence. Mr. Mercer is asking you to attend tonight's shareholder event. Aubrey stared at the screen. Her heart immediately began racing. She almost declined. Then another message arrived. Please come. There are things you deserve to hear. Hours later she found herself standing near the entrance of the grand ballroom where the event was already underway. Hundreds of guests filled the room. Television cameras lined the perimeter. Reporters moved between tables. Investors discussed projections and future growth. Aubrey remained near the back, hoping nobody would notice her. Then the lights dimmed. Conversations faded. Declan Mercer stepped onto the stage. The room immediately fell silent. He stood behind the podium for several seconds without speaking. Calm. Composed. Yet there was something different about him tonight. Something unusually personal. Finally he looked out across the audience. For years, he began, people have assumed my greatest achievement was building a successful company. Several guests nodded. Others listened carefully. Tonight I want to correct that misunderstanding. A ripple of curiosity moved through the ballroom. Declan continued. Success is important. Growth is important. But neither means much if you lose sight of what truly matters. Victoria frowned. This was not the speech anyone had approved. Several board members exchanged nervous glances. Then Declan reached into his jacket pocket and removed a small object. Even from the back of the room, Aubrey recognized it immediately. The platinum ring. Her ring. The room remained completely silent. 8 months ago, Declan said, his voice carrying across the ballroom, I made a decision that changed my life. Shock began spreading through the audience. Reporters lowered their pens. Cameras adjusted their focus. Many people have spent weeks speculating about rumors. Tonight I will give you the truth. Victoria's face lost all color. Declan looked toward the entrance. Toward Aubrey. Their eyes met across the crowded ballroom. The truth, he said softly, is that the most important person in my life has spent months protecting a promise that should never have required her silence. Every heartbeat seemed to echo through the room. Then Declan stepped away from the podium and extended his hand toward her. Aubrey. The entire audience turned. Hundreds of faces followed his gaze. Aubrey stood frozen. Emotion surged through her chest. For one brief moment, neither moved. Then she slowly walked forward. The crowd parted naturally as she crossed the ballroom. When she finally reached the stage, Declan took her hand. His expression held none of the distance that once defined him. Only certainty. Only truth. And as cameras flashed and the room watched in stunned silence, Declan lifted the platinum ring and prepared to reveal the secret they had hidden for far too long. The ballroom remained silent as Declan held the platinum ring between his fingers. For a moment, nobody seemed to breathe. Investors, reporters, executives, and board members stared at the stage, trying to understand what they were witnessing. Aubrey stood beside him, her heart pounding so hard she could barely hear anything else. Then Declan spoke. 8 months ago, Aubrey and I were married. A collective gasp moved through the room. Camera flashes erupted like bursts of light across the ballroom. Reporters immediately began scribbling notes. Conversations started, then stopped again as everyone waited to hear more. Declan never looked away from Aubrey. She never asked for attention. She never asked for recognition. In fact, she spent months protecting a confidential agreement, because she believed keeping her word mattered more than protecting her reputation. The room grew even quieter. While people questioned her motives, she remained silent. While rumors spread, she remained dignified. While others tried to tear her down, she chose integrity. Aubrey felt tears gathering in her eyes. Not because of the attention, because every word was true. Declan turned toward the audience. Many of you assume she benefited from knowing me. The truth is exactly the opposite. My life became better because of her. Across the ballroom, Victoria Mercer sat frozen in her chair. The confidence she had carried for weeks had completely vanished. Nearby board members exchanged stunned looks. Several already understood what this revelation meant. The rumors had been false. The assumptions had been wrong. And the person responsible for spreading them would soon face consequences. Declan gently took Aubrey's left hand. His voice softened. This ring spent 8 months hidden in a pocket because of a promise. Tonight that promise ends. Slowly, carefully, he slid the platinum band onto her finger. Applause began somewhere near the back of the room. Then another group joined. Then another. Within seconds, the entire ballroom erupted into a standing ovation. Aubrey looked down at the ring, overwhelmed by emotion. The symbol she had carried in secret for so long finally rested where it belonged. Declan smiled. There is one more thing I need to say. The applause gradually faded. He looked directly at her. The contract was supposed to be temporary. What I feel for you is not. A fresh wave of emotion swept through the crowd. Aubrey laughed softly through her tears. You always wait until hundreds of people are watching. Declan smiled. Apparently I do. Laughter spread. Through the ballroom. For the first time in months, everything felt light. Everything felt honest. In the weeks that followed, the truth reshaped everything. Internal investigations revealed how confidential information had been improperly circulated. Victoria Mercer quietly resigned from several leadership committees and lost much of her influence within the organization. The board publicly reaffirmed its support for Declan's leadership. The merger moved forward successfully. As for Logan Pierce, he spent several uncomfortable weeks watching news outlets replay the story of the secret marriage he had mocked without understanding. Eventually, even he admitted he had judged Aubrey unfairly. But by then, Aubrey no longer needed anyone's approval. 1 year later, sunlight streamed through the windows of a private rooftop garden overlooking Manhattan. Family members, close friends, and trusted colleagues gathered around elegantly decorated tables filled with flowers and laughter. It was not a wedding. That had happened long ago. It was a celebration of their first public anniversary. Aubrey stood beside Declan as the city stretched endlessly behind them. Life had changed in ways neither could have predicted. Her father was healthy and smiling. The company was thriving. Most importantly, the relationship that began as an agreement had become something real. Later that evening, as the last guests prepared to leave, Declan handed Aubrey a familiar velvet box. She opened it and found a folded piece of paper inside. The same paper she had once left beside the divorce documents. Only now a new handwritten message appeared across the bottom. Aubrey smiled as she read it. "Best contract I ever signed." She looked up and found Declan watching her. The city lights sparkled around them. The future remained unwritten. But for the first time, neither of them feared what came next. Because the greatest promise between them had never been written on paper. It had been written in trust, kindness, and a love that survived every secret until it finally stepped into the light. If Aubrey and Declan's journey touched your heart, do not forget to like this video, share it with someone who believes in true love, and subscribe to Chosen by Love for more unforgettable billionaire romance stories. Your support helps us bring more emotional, inspiring, and heartwarming stories to life. Join our growing family and never miss a new love story filled with hope, courage, and happily ever after.